about somebody who's not Christian at all, who actually is pro-choice, and will say, well, what about the mother's health?
Well, that's exactly the other side of it. The other side of it is a set of claims about the interests of the mother. Pro-choice advocates tend to say that the interests of the mother outweigh the interests of the child. What I would say in general, and I say in general not because I hold this with any lightness. I mean, I'm very much convinced of my position, but I say in general because there are always those examples like the one you brought up, life of the mother, or rape or incest that people bring up. In general, it is not morally permissible to take the life of a child, whether that child is in the womb or out of the womb. Location does not matter. Now, there are extenuating circumstances that can make that judgment more difficult. You mentioned the life of the mother. Typically, even in relatively pro-life states that do have, now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned, in states that have pro-life legislation, even very conservative states, there are exceptions made for the life of the mother. Now, typically that is, just to be entirely frank with you, unnecessary. The likelihood or the percentage of births that put the life of the mother in danger in such a way that an abortion is the only way of correcting that situation is vanishingly small. I mean, some have argued zero. Effectively,
I can't even find any numbers when you search it online.
Right. And I've heard similar arguments of like it's so vanishingly small that it is essentially statistically worthless. Statistically, it just does not happen. Now there are other scenarios, and again, I have to admit, I'm not operating purely within my, I guess you could say, area of expertise when I talk about this, but of course I've had conversations about it, I've had arguments about it, but I have also heard that there's a conceptual issue, a lack of conceptual clarity when it comes to whether a child is being aborted in cases where the mother's life is in danger. So let me give you an example. There are cases in which the mother miscarries, and in the miscarrying, the fetus dies. Now, because the fetus has already died, if the baby is allowed to remain, the corpse is allowed to remain inside the mother, she will die.
Exactly.
Her life is at stake.
Definitely, I agree with that.
Now, when the corpse is extracted from the mother's body, is that an abortion? The act is not killing the child.
Yeah, that's true, yeah, I agree.
The child has already died. This is just extracting what is essentially, what is essentially a corpse.
Because any abortion doctor would say if you don't get the baby out, the patient will come back infected, bleeding, or dead.
Yeah, it causes a lot of issues. So, leaving rotting tissue in the person's body.
That's a beautiful example. I agree wholeheartedly.
So in that case, someone may look at that and go, "Well, see, abortion was needed in the case where the mother's life was threatened."
But that's not really an abortion.
But that's actually confusing the fact that that's not an abortion. That's removing a miscarriage. And this is a very important difference, because the act of the doctor in removing the child, or the corpse, the corpse of the child, that act is not an act that kills the child. In abortion, you have an act of removal in which the infant is killed. Exactly. In which, maybe if some viewers aren't comfortable with me saying infant, fetus or whatever is extracted is actually actively killed. It dies as a result of that extraction.
Killing it on purpose.
To say that to remove a miscarriage is abortion is like to say a pregnancy, or a birth that goes wrong, just because the baby does die once being removed, that's an abortion. No, that's not an abortion either. That's an unfortunate, tragic incident where something went wrong with the birth.